Hello, everybody. I'm Joel Ledlow. This is Evolution JKD. As always, I'm joined by Ian.
Hi,
Everybody say hi to Ian
what
because
up?
he needs that. Uh, so we we got cool stuff to talk about. I have some cool stuff. Ian always has cool stuff to talk about. But we the do not come to us for technical help on stuff. Ian is really good, but he has to troubleshoot my stuff and anything else that's happening, which is hysterically fun to
Yeah.
deal. It's not. It's terrible. But I think part of what we can take from our technical difficulties, hopefully you don't hear any of those, but we had some technical difficulties before and we had to problem solve and we try this and we try that. And that's going to really go into the theme of it. So we're over there just like, this is stupid. Like, what is going on? But at the same time, we're still okay. And he's making faces at me. And, we're still being silly in the midst of something not working or not being right or what we were looking for or as efficient as we wanted to be. We had things that were working, but not so great. What the hell am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about learning. And I think that's going to be our big one today is how you learn. And the sort of theme I want to go with, I'm going to rattle out some stuff and then I'm going to let Ian jump full force into it. He doesn't know what I'm going to be talking about today, which is kind of unique. I don't even know if I know what I'm talking about today, but we'll go
We'll
find
see.
out. The idea is it's not the game, but how you play it. So out in the, especially in the Jeet Kune Do world, many are against reference points or energy training, but I think this is more about their outlook on training than it is about those particular drills. I've seen, I've seen quite a few uh, people out there do things that they fall into the very traps. They're over there quoting Bruce Lee. They're like, "Hey, Bruce said this, Bruce said that," and then they fall into the very things that they're shouting about. And you don't want to. Bruce was really against a few things, really cementing yourself into or locking yourself into a thing instead of learning from it and becoming a better person, a better martial artist. So I think this isn't a quote so much as a directive, a rule to be guided by in your training. Play, but play seriously. And even as a kid, especially as a kid, you should know that. And as animals, as children, as humans, we know all of this. There is aliveness in play. And that's what we want to get. And as creatures, as humans, as animals, we play, hopefully, our whole lives. And that play, the reason we want to do it for our whole life is that play allows us to learn. And that's it. We're going to learn through play. Like educators all over know this one. It is not anything new. I'm not over there quoting something new. If you look to my kids and I, we love watching nature shows about animals. If you watch animals, animals play quite often in their youth to develop or cultivate the attributes that they will use later in their adulthood to survive. Now, if you take a lion as a great example, or any of the big cat predators, a lion doesn't learn to bite just so or in a particular way. A lion can bite and it knows to grab onto things, but it learns to do this through play. It learns, hey, we're going to bite to the neck through play. And they then learn to choke and do, higher levels. But it's about the levels of efficiency in the wild. And that's where we want to get into it. It goes into something else uh, called primary freedom, and it's a really big one in the higher echelons of Jeet Kune Do. You get into the philosophy aspects. You're talking about primary freedom, which is like going back to the nature channel. We're animals. We want to get back into that thing. So, as an animal, we should have the same outlook as other animals who are using play to develop things and then learn from those hits and misses. So if we go out on a hunt as an animal and I'm a lion and I grab onto something, a prey animal, and I choked it down with a bite, but I found during that struggle, all of a sudden I adjusted and I got a better grip that allowed me to subdue my prey more quickly, then that would be something for me to apply to the next hunt. And maybe that success could be applied to the next one better or sooner, but I don't really care because maybe I didn't do a great job on this one, but it worked and my belly is full. That's a successful hunt, but then maybe I can be more efficient on the next hunt. And that's what we're trying to always do is be more efficient. So maybe I understand this and I discovered if I grab a different way and bite on that neck in a different way, it goes faster. So I look for that transition sooner. And then I think, well, I've done a bunch of hunts. I've been successful enough times to still be going. And maybe I find a way to get to that end point sooner. But that takes a lot of hunts and a lot of practice doing it and all the success and failure along the way to gain the experience that would then translate into me being a more efficient hunter or being more able to better apply a movement. If I'm a lion, I'm biting. If I'm a fighter, I'm hitting somebody. Then that knowledge is going to be passed on to my children. So the lion passes it on to the next cubs, the next generation, and they do that in the form of guided play. Well, that's what we're doing in a martial arts school is that guided play so that we can develop the attributes, a feel for how to approach an attack through play with others. You're looking at timing, distancing, tactile awareness, spatial awareness, understanding how to apply force, whether it's a bite or a punch or a kick or a whatever. So whether you're a lion or a fighter, you're going to need all of those. And what I'm putting out there is that idea of primary freedom, but also the idea of learning through play, having that playfulness in your training, which is then going to turn into aliveness. It is, I tell everybody, it's like playing a game of tag. Sparring is a martial artist version of tag. It should be fun. You should be laughing. And sometimes you're it, and sometimes you dodge them, and sometimes you don't. But if you're playing with your friends, it's a game. It's not malicious, it's not hurtful, and you're going to be really performing. And there's something else I want to go in there. And Ian, I'm going to let you jump in on this one because he has actually a great part of this, that learning through playfulness. And it really has to do with your tribe, with your group. I saw an Olympics once and it was snowboarders. And a snowboarder came down and I think it was a triple jump. Don't quote me on this. I don't remember what it was. This was years ago. I just remember the snowboarder came down and did a fantastic job. It was like, yay, celebrate. They're in first place. They're going for the gold. They have the gold. They are in the first place. The next person, this is like the last three people to go down. The next person goes down, jump, 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 landed a great thing, moved into first place. The other person got kicked down to silver, but guess what? The person who just got kicked down to silver was the first person to go there and celebrate that success of the next person. And then, so now you have person A who is silver and person B who is now gold, and person C is coming down. But guess what? They crushed it. And guess what? The two people who were celebrating that person C doing an amazing run and moving up to the next thing and taking gold. That person C got gold. It was literally they reversed. They went 1, 2, 3, and it reversed. And it was really astounding for me because I was so struck by the fact that person A was in gold and they got pushed down to silver, but they were celebrating. And then they get pushed down to bronze and they were still celebrating. because it was an overall success. It didn't take away or deter from what they did, but they were still able to celebrate that other thing. And it's something that Ian has talked about with Tricking World and all the people that he's been around in that world for the most part. I'm sure there's a jackass in there somewhere, but
There's one or two.
but one or two, but that's going to be everywhere. They're just people are going to be that way. But for the community as a whole, they tend to have that supportive. And I think that's a really good idea. And Ian, I'm going to turn this over to you for the idea of that playfulness and that being able to be like a lion cub and explore things and try things, but also having a group, a family that will support you. That's what a martial arts school should be doing, is providing you a place to be alive and playful and have that discovery without malice or repercussions.
Yeah, shit. Where do I start? Okay, so when
We're going heavy on this one today, folks. It's play, but with heavy undertone. No, it's good.
so in terms of primary freedom, the thing that I relate that to, say a cub, would be a new student, where it's up to the instructor or the elder, or the person that's higher above, to help cultivate the instinctual cultivation, I guess. Oh, sorry, it was
Hmm.
the AC, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm catching something there.
Yeah,
We
sorry.
got weird stuff.
Um,
Who knows with us? It could be
so,
AC.
dude, I'm
It
in
could
Vegas.
be.
We're gonna have to live with
It could be.
it.
It could be an alien.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's up to the teacher to help cultivate the natural instincts, I guess, or the basic skills and whatnot. And as that cub grows up, when we talk about that efficiency stuff, that cub, generally speaking, usually becomes a teacher of some sort and has the new role or new responsibility to take over of teaching his or her students or their students
Hmm.
how to cultivate themselves, and that repeats the cycle. And through that, we should be gaining efficiency and whatnot. But setting the tone um, can it's something that, obviously, if you have a teacher, it's incredibly helpful. But it is something that, for somebody like me, who taught myself all my own flips and whatnot, I'm still teaching myself how to have the right attitude, how to have the right mindset, how to have the right
Yeah.
things that I'm looking for whenever I'm trying to, improve whatever it is that I'm doing. So, you can kind of see this journey on Instagram right now, but I'm going through this like hell of a gauntlet trying to tweak this one particular trick called a touchdown raise. And what it is a setup. So this trick is a setup to get into a bigger trick. But I have been throwing this and have had years of inconsistency with some of the skills that I'm trying to do, and it all goes back to that beginning. And so now,
Yep.
looking at that, it's kind of frustrating, because I used to be really good at this. I've done really high level skills out of it, and coming
Hmm.
back after my injury, I've not completely forgotten how to do it, but my body and the way that I was aware of it has changed. And so I'm
Yeah.
going back and having to be like, on one end it's a lot of work, but on the other end I'm discovering all these little intricacies and all these little tiny things that start to make the biggest difference, that start to apply in other tricks as well.
Yeah.
So
I'd also add, because I found this in, and then I'm gonna let you go back into it, is i- sometimes when you increase the efficiency of uh, an entrance, one movement or one aspect of your movement, then you have to readjust everything else, because now you're like literally relearning it. And people don't understand that
right,
sometimes, that, hey, I am suddenly, part one goes into part two, goes into part three, goes into part four. Well, I've done one, two, three, four. I've been doing that for a while, but I suddenly upgraded my part one. Well, that means you have to, like, it's almost like two, three, four, which I'm going to come back in this in a minute, because it's going to change a little bit of thought process for the movement of two, three, four, changes everything in how you approach the movement. And it almost becomes an entirely new movement, and you have to relearn.
sometimes that 1, 2, 3, 4 that you're good at, you have to go back to zero and break it down even further. And this is something that you and I have talked about and many times
Yeah.
before. But The prerequisite to a touchdown raise, or TD rise or whatever. There's lots of different ways to call it, but is what's called a Gumby, and that's a pretty much a bad side cartwheel that's very like round and crooked. I could not.
If you suddenly went, what the hell is he talking about? Don't worry, I don't know what he's talking
Yeah,
about
you could
either.
look it up. Just look up Gumby
Look it
trick.
up.
Yeah,
I
but
probably will too.
the thing about it was that I was never able to do that, and it wasn't until I started doing that that I started having stuff click, and it started helping me teach about all of the other 1, 2, 3, 4 like we talk about. And I wish that I would have had that, but it's just sometimes it takes you so long to figure out what it is that you're doing, which is something that I wanted to talk about because, for one, there's different aspects or different perspective on efficiency. It's something that you and I talk about a lot, or what you told me when
Mm-hmm.
we did JKD, right? We're not looking to be efficient like a Prius, we're looking to be efficient like a Formula One car. So
Mm-hmm.
our output and the way that we train that specific aspect of efficiency is not the same for, well, can I last 12 rounds in a boxing match? The second thing
Yeah,
is that approach is everything. How you think about stuff, how you think about
absolutely.
coming into something, the way that, and I think that's why you and I have such a fun relationship, I'd say, is because I
Mm-hmm.
understand a lot of your analogies, and I'm a lot of times able to match it and say, oh, that reminds me of this, and then that's where we establish that connection. But the approach to how do we look at a jab, how do we look at this, whenever I'm teaching music on my channel, it's something that I do a lot. I'm saying, hey, instead of trying to be so clinical with it, focus on this particular direction, and that will open up all the doors that you didn't have these keys for.
Yeah. I wanted to add in something to there. Ian really touched on some great stuff in there, which is something that we haven't talked about in a while, but a conversation we had like a long, long time ago. I just assume I've had all these conversations with Ian because that's who I have most of those conversations with. When you move up a level in something, and I think the idea is if you're going to move up, if you're going to become something more, you have to let go of what you were before. And I'm going to give analogies, and that's just so you can relate to it. The only reason you have an analogy is so I can take my understanding and help you tie it into your understanding, and then you can pull from all of your wealth of knowledge that you have in your experience, and then you go, oh well, it's pretty simple, I got it totally fine. You don't have to learn it all over like what I'm you don't have to learn what I'm telling you. You can just go, hey, I have that, I'm just going to change it and make it fit in there. So I I think this is a really big one. I think a lot of people have a difficult time with this one, or maybe don't even know, or they're not aware of this idea. And I would challenge you to explore this idea of letting go. So, for a movement to become something else, you have to let go of the movement before. If you're going to do so, if we put it into like tumbling, if you're going to do a back roll, becomes a back handspring, becomes a back flip, they're not the same thing, even though they all go backwards. You're basically, you're if you broke them down, you'd be like, hey, you're kind of doing the same thing, but you're not. You're doing it. You could go, wait for it. Ian's gonna love this one. It's Pokemon. You cannot evolve from one Pokemon into the next. There's a whole generation who just tied into this, and another generation that goes, what? But that's okay. Look it up,
They'll
old
catch up.
people. Look it up, old people. You're probably too stuck. Hopefully, you're not. Hopefully, if you're old and you don't know what Pokemon is, you'll look it up and you're not too stuck in your ways. But for a Pokemon to evolve into the next Pokemon, they can't be the other one. And if you want to put it into other things, if you're a caterpillar and you go through that metamorphosis to become a butterfly, you can't be a caterpillar anymore. You have to let go of that and move on to the next thing. And I think that's a big thing. It's a big mental thing that we're talking about. That's why this is a podcast and not a video, because we're challenging your mental state and how you approach thoughts, or how you mentally approach movement. So if you're primed, as Ian is saying, if you're approaching something, that approach actually begins before the movement. It's the mental preparation. If you watch a gymnast in the Olympics or worlds or whatever, but a gymnast is going to do something, you'll see them mentally focus in, and then physically prepare themselves and then take off. And you can think about that all the way through. We have a mental preparation, then a physical preparation, and then go. In sports all the time, they have on your mark, get set, go. That's a process to guide athletes through the mental preparation, and you work on it. You'll see athletes doing, they're going to do high jump. They'll have a mental and they'll put it, and then they put their body into action to go through it. And here's the thing, if you miss the approach, you probably miss the jump. If you nail the approach, the jump has a much higher success rate. So a lot of it, whether you're doing a high jump or a long jump or a pole vault, or if you're doing like hurdles, you're doing 100-meter hurdles, if you find everything gets in sync the right way from the beginning, or if you're going to do a gymnastics tumbling run, it's that initial takeoff. And even before that is the mental preparation.
I think that this is really important because what calls to me the most out of this conversation is like going back to use what is useful, right? Um, and
Yeah.
the approach of these things can be the difference between you being able to see something that's useful or something that's not useful in any aspect of cultivation, not even martial arts, right? Hey,
Yeah.
I'm teaching a class. Let me try this analogy. The class doesn't get it. Okay, well, that's not useful. But I teach the same concept, but in a different analogy. And then everybody goes, oh, I got it. Well, now suddenly it's a completely different thing where people are saying and making connections to whatever the skill is or whatever the concept is that we're trying to draw and relate. You know, here's a great example. You have to have, you're doing traditional kung fu, right? Wushu or whatever.
Yeah.
One person says, hey, I'm going to do horse dance, every single day. The other person is like, I'm actually going to get in the gym and lift, and those other two things don't work for each other, but you're still making your legs stronger. You're still cultivating.
Yeah.
And
And go ahead. Go ahead.
the thing that is important to understand, though, is that while it's good to appreciate the differences of what works and what doesn't, it's also really important, which is what we try to expose the most of the shared truths, the shared mechanics, the shared concepts that have the commonality to where it gives you a reference point to where you can branch off and figure out how and what does and what doesn't work for you.
Yeah. So there's two things on this. Uh, in my mental reverse order, because I'm going to tie in with Ian saying what works for you. And sometimes it's because that's the way you learn something, or because that's physically what you have to do.
Right.
Why can I not go, oh, why aren't you going to the gym and like doing heavy lift? Well, I don't have a gym.
Right.
Okay, I can't do that. I'm going to do, but I can do horse stance. Or I can do, squats on the couch or something like that. You've got different things, or, you know, honestly, again, goes back to the mental part. I cannot get my brain to go into like going to do squats. Just like I'm bored. Like I'm not going to do it. Like I just think it's stupid. I hate it. I don't want to do it. But I can go jump on the trampoline for 3 hours,
Right.
or I can go do something else for an hour and a half, and I can really work my legs that way. So sometimes that mental preparation or that individuality isn't because one is better for physically developing you, but it's because mentally that's what the individual can actually do. And sometimes physically that's what the individual can do, or because that's what's available.
If
If
you
you don't
can't,
have, yeah, if you don't have a gym with that equipment, it's literally impossible to do that, to do an exercise if you don't have that equipment.
if you can't jump, none of this works for you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to do a standing backflip. Well, if you can't jump, it doesn't work. And I think for pretty much anything, leg strength is there. But say you have a knee injury, you might have to do some of the stuff. And Neil and I are both really big into the knees over toes guy. There's a ton of stuff in there. If you haven't, look it up, because
Yeah, it saved
it's
me.
just really good. It's just been proven. And like, listen to him. He's got some really good stuff. And again, like us, he's very passionate about what he's doing, and he's sharing knowledge that he's gathered, not necessarily that he is the prodigitioner. He didn't make this stuff up himself. He gathered the information, and then he's sharing his process along the way. But maybe you had to have knee surgery because of something that happened, of an injury. You had somebody like bang, you were in a car wreck, whatever. You have to work around that. Things change, or you're older, or you have a degenerative disease, something in there. But I'd also like to go into something. Another part is the idea of the playfulness and the mental aspect and the mental approach that you take to something. So in the JKD world, and in the martial arts world in general, we have things that help us go along, and they're mental primers. So whether you're doing, I did this in several martial arts, not just Jeet Kune Do, but uh, I'm a JKD guy, so I tend to talk in JKD terms. For me, it's always think hit, simplicity, efficiency, longest weapon to the nearest target. Those are principles, and we're going to guide our movement and our exploration with those principles and the idea of intercepting. However, are you being playful in that exploration? Are you keeping the aliveness in there? Are you having fun with it and being open to discovery? And that means if you're open to exploration and discovery with this playfulness, then you take away the negativity that goes with it, and you're more accepting of that level of efficiency of successes and failures. You don't go, oh man, I didn't do it right. No, you go, well, that didn't work out as well. And then you move on, and your body and your subconscious absorb that and translate that experience into skill and greater efficiency. If you're playing a game and you're having fun, you will stay engaged with it for a lot longer. So whatever your jump is, and that's kind of the thing. If you're doing squats and you can mentally go, "This is awesome. I'm gonna love do this. I'm gonna do. How much more can I squat?" And you can play that mental game, and it's fun for you. It's rewarding for you. Then great. If you need to jump on a trampoline because doing squats is boring, but you can jump on a trampoline all day long because it's fun, or pick whatever other movement you want to do that's going to develop leg strength. That's the whole point. And sometimes that's where the individuality is where can you find the playfulness so that you can do the work necessary, disguise the work necessary to develop or cultivate attributes and physical qualities, whether that be strength or reactivity or motor skills or coordination of muscle groups, whatever you want to say. What are those attributes? What are those things that you're cultivating? Like if you're over there cultivating a jab, I gotta say you're barking up the wrong tree on this one. You are going down the wrong path. I could throw out 50 other more analogies, but like really, a jab is a point, it's a movement for you to explore hitting. And that's more important. Hitting is more important than a jab, and because it's dead by itself. If you are trying to score a hit and the pursuit or the exploration of a jab, quote unquote, whatever that might be for you, helps you understand how to score a hit better, yay. And you're having fun and you put that playfulness. So with your training partners or by yourself, you can develop that quickness and the distancing and everything. Fantastic. If you're so fixated on just doing a quote unquote jab, then you're going to do a jab and it's going to be whatever you think is pristine and perfect. And then you're going to get your ass kicked.
So I got a lot to say on this. So first off, if you're cultivating your jab for the sake of your jab looking really good, for example, your jab sells well on camera, even though it's not useful, that's a different approach. If you're trying to make your jab useful in either combative / sport or even sparring, because sometimes sparring can be somewhat competitive in a friendly level, I'd recommend keeping it there. But then yeah, I totally agree with Sifu Joel.
I'd say a quick injection of thought. Performance of telling a story is not the same thing as combative. So they're two
Right.
totally different
Totally.
things. And so if you're thinking a jab is a jab is a jab, no.
Context is
Um,
key.
a,
Yeah.
a jab to tell a story in a performance is one thing. A jab to score a hit is something different. Go ahead.
Then again, if I'm going to tell you a story by hitting you in the face of this is a story of pain, then that applies too. But that's another story for another day.
We
But
better both be. We'll both be laughing. That's what we want.
not you specifically, but just but what I was also getting at was the reason why I was talking about approach after like as an
Hmm.
addition to what you were saying is because I think that approach is also incredibly synonymous, maybe not the same thing as attitude and how to get the most out of your training with the
I
right mindset.
I think that's a great way to put it. Is your attitude, your approach. If you have a positive attitude, and like we're throwing things out, people, so that we can help you maybe grasp this idea that we're trying to share of playfulness and fun, something that Ian and I do when we train together, and something that we've experienced when we train with other people that we continue to train with. I don't like to train with people that I don't have fun with.
Yeah, me
Like if
neither.
I'm not having a good time, and I've trained with a lot of people in a lot of different things and had a phenomenal time. I'm going to share something. So there was a woman, Vera, who her son actually takes class with me now. And I first met her years ago doing sailing lessons. I got sailing
Oh
lessons
yeah, yeah. You told me about that a long
as a
time ago.
present for me, and I went in. I didn't know anything. I'd never been sailing. We had like motorboats, like ski boats and stuff when I was growing up. I didn't grow up with sailboats, but I grew up with pirate movies, and that was a great sailboat. So Vera didn't have that sailing experience either. We came in, not that we were really great, but we had this just love of exploration and not trying to get it, but just be there and enjoy it and have fun. There was two other guys who were in our group, our learning group, and I think that they honestly were trying to like overcome a fear of water. I didn't fear the water, she didn't fear the water, and we kind of moved around. So I'm with one person, then I'm with another person, and it worked out that when we got to the end, and these were two-person sailboats. I don't remember what kind of sailboat it was. It was a little sailboat, and I'm by no means an expert, but we got in this sailboat and it was just fun. We had the attitude of we're going to have fun and we're going to push it. And it was like being in a movie, and we were thinking of ourselves as pirates. Here we were, two quote unquote grown-ups, just coming in as kids with that playfulness and that aliveness and the sheer enjoyment to do a thing and experience a thing of sailing. And we were going, and yes, we had to pay attention to how the knots were done and make sure the sails were done properly and all that stuff, but we had somebody to guide us. But when we got out there, and it was harness the wind and make the boat go that way as fast as possible, and then flip it around and make it go the other way as fast as possible, our approach to sailing was for the enjoyment, and we were pushing the envelope. Could someone do it better than us? Yeah, but we also didn't have that fear of, because we had life jackets on. It's like you fall in the water, and we just had this lovely, wonderful time. And I think that's something. If you found that in something else, you can apply it to your martial arts. If you found it in your martial arts, you can apply it to something else. And I would challenge you, whatever you find that gives you that playfulness and that joy and that love, but it still challenges you as an individual, try to apply that to everything else. I found it in martial arts, and I love it when I can apply it to everything else.
This is what we talk about when we say you don't come to learn from Jeet Kune Do, you don't come to learn Jeet Kune Do, you come to learn from Jeet Kune Do. But even just
Mm-hmm.
having the imaginative mindset and injecting that into either other aspects of your training or other mundane tasks that you have to do, instead of doing the sailing thing, you're pretending to be a pirate. Well, I got to get the dishes done. So, okay, well, instead of me washing dishes, I'm cleaning surgeon's tools, to get ready for, surgery or whatever. And suddenly I made a game out of it.
Yeah.
I've had to, a real example was, bust my butt for my black belt test, and I got beat up, but it was a challenge. But I used that challenge
What?
going into other things that I find to be to prove to be, you know, a high level of adversity to me, and I can build upon that. Maybe not necessarily the same problem solving strategies, but the tenacity and the spirit that you cultivate from that, you know. Or maybe you work out really hard and then you get to
I
reap the
I
benefits from your physique. You know, there's so many things.
I think that's something. So we talk about in martial arts, and if you've trained in martial arts or you're looking to train in martial arts, you're going to hear this. So there's the mind, body, spirit. Those are three that are go through there all the time, and I think Ian really touched on it. That ties this into more of the uh, traditional sort of talking points of mind, body, spirit. So you need to mentally focus on what you're doing and mentally approach something. You've got to examine things as a scientist. There's the physical, you have to do the physicality, but we've been talking about the spirit and the attitude, the approach that you're going to have to it. So when you get there, when you're faced with adversity, are you going to crumble underneath it, or are you going to shift mentally so that you can overcome? Ian's talking about his black belt. That's literally the whole thing. When you're physically and mentally exhausted, can you still like go, all right, let's go?
Yeah.
Why? Because it's you've done that twist of that mental twist to make it something you can endure, to keep going, to keep moving forward. And we might put this in as a martial artist, and in black belt test was something. My black belt test was something, and if probably for many of you, if you're listening, if you had a black belt test, it was probably something to get through. Or some other things. Childbirth is a big thing to get through.
Yeah.
All of
Uh,
these things are there's so many
injuries.
things that we can all relate to, not just martial arts black belt test, but hey, what made you persevere? What made you get through that thing? How can you take that little thing and go, hey, because I've switched the gears, and instead of me thinking about that, I was like, how much can whatever. I turned it into, I was a pirate, or I changed some mundane task, or I changed something that was astronomically way outside of my comfort level into something that I could better grasp and relate to.
It's
And that
like
can be something grand or something really, really small.
it's like you learn the martial arts and then you learn to apply the martial arts in everything that you do, but then you look at it the other way and you start to see how everything is applied to martial arts, and there's this duality to all cultivation, all what you're doing, and it's your own personal kung
You
fu.
know,
If you got to work hard at something, you got to study for that test. You know, everything that you've learned from your kung fu or your JKD or Muay Thai or whatever it is that you practice is all the same thing, because at least from a clinical stance, it's just problem solving, and you're building yourself up to be adequate at
yeah.
problem solving.
I love that about martial arts. I found everybody, and I've trained in a lot of martial arts, a lot of them. I've trained in like 12 martial arts that I can say I've like trained in, and a bunch of martial arts that I've kind of like fooled around in, which means I've fooled around is probably more than most people have trained in. Uh, it helps you. And as Ian was saying, you get this, it helps you understand things. I find that my martial training, in almost everything I do all the way through every day, my martial training has helped me get through it better, because it's allowed me to problem solve and adapt and more ably apply myself mentally and physically and spiritually to whatever it is, whether it's doing the dishes or dealing with something, on a personal level, or having to go to work, or doing something with my kids, or mowing the lawn, or going to a meeting, or, honestly, hanging out with my friends.
It is way what I one of the biggest things that I've taken from martial arts is cultivating. Now it is way harder to give up than it is to try, and that's a big one for me.
Yeah. That's a big one. I like that one. I would also say, if you're if you are training in martial arts just to defend, just for self-defense or just to compete, I think you have really limited yourself in the scope of whatever martial arts. And look, I've trained enough martial arts to have an appreciation for a lot of different walks. If you're doing kickboxing stuff or grappling stuff or more traditional stuff or weapons stuff or whatever, if you're doing it just for self-defense or just to learn how to kick somebody's ass or just to compete, I think you are really limiting the benefits of what you can gain from that martial art. And I'm saying that about all martial arts. The instructors and the people you're with, you want to find that tribe, that group that is going to help you play, but play seriously and cultivate and grow and have the right attitude, the right spirituality, however you want to say it. But I think I want to leave you with, you're going to move, if you're training in martial arts with all the right qualities and with all the right beginnings and that setup, that mental preparation, and you go into it with that and you have that playfulness is going to be there, and the friendship is going to be there, and the bonds are going to be there, and you're going to find out it is going to give you so much more than just learning how to fight. And that's it.
Yeah.
Because, gang, I can fight really, really great. Like, no bullshit, I can throw down. But if you get in your car and you run me over, I will lose. So I, maybe I can dodge out of the way, but that's not the point. The point is, there's always someone who can beat you. There's always, I'm going to lose. But so where can I find my win? Where can I be like, hey, you know what? My experience of training with these people and that play that I have with them and the growth that I get from them and the personal journey of positivity that I have by being with these people and challenging myself, that's really fantastic for me.
Yeah.
Ian, we're going to wrap us up and end us off.
Yeah, I will say that this is episode 4 of our podcast, and we have lots of videos on our channel. We've got a course that we have available if you're wanting to get into Jeet Kune Do, or if you just want an extra training.
More
tool.
on the way. More on the way.
More on the way. We're kind of curious to hear any thoughts that you all have if you got this far in the video. And if you have, and you got to the end, we want to know, what's your favorite old school Kung Fu movie? And on that note, please be sure to like, subscribe with us. And that's all I got, personally.
Tell your friends about us.
Tell your friends
Because
about
if you're
us.
this far, you're probably liked and subscribed. But tell your friends. Share us around. Let them know. Until next time.
Bye.
We'll see you then.